on the 5th floor of the Labyrinth City, the place of blue grasslands and ruins. In that place, where even after half a year the traces of the battle from that day still had not disappeared, it appeared. Flap. It stepped forward. The figure wore a hood, a black stellar robe, and ominous black ornaments hanging from its waist and hands. It began to walk across the 5th floor. It walked across the place where the mercenaries had fought the Outer God half a year ago. It walked across the place where Alan had once stood, and at last it stopped at the exact spot where he had finished off the Outer God. The figure murmured. It tilted its head repeatedly, as though the place was both fascinating and completely incomprehensible. How much time passed like that? Until just moments before, it had simply stood there without movement, staring down at the ground. Then the figure let out a soft laugh. It smiled broadly, as if something about this situation amused it deeply. The figure said, "Ha, I did not think he would be able to do this much." It muttered the words in a voice that could not be identified as either male or female. After a brief pause, the figure said, "Interesting. Truly, I wonder how far he can go. This is becoming fun." A smile spread across its face, innocent like a child who had just discovered a new toy. The figure said, "If he can endure the next one as well, then this will become truly entertaining." Returning to Alan, who received the letter, he thought, "I was wondering why the Queen invited me, but maybe it's related to Kalfa. In fact, Cretinia Sion, the 8th monarch of Asteria. She was the 8th monarch of Asteria, and despite the fact that the nobles were running wild, she neither visibly managed the state nor participated in political games, yet still held considerable authority. The reason was the power possessed by Cretinia Sion, or more precisely, the power held exclusively by the royal bloodline of Asteria, the Golden Chronicle Eye. Though it was called the Golden Chronicle Eye, it was not actually an ability related to vision. As far as Alan knew, the name came simply from the clear golden eyes that members of the royal family were born with. The inherited ability itself was simple in explanation. The power to pass authority down through generations. Like carrying over saved data in a game, power itself could be directly transferred to the next generation. The concept sounded simple, but its implications were anything but. With each generation, the accumulated authority grew stronger, enough that the royal family could maintain its rule without ever needing to involve itself deeply in political struggles. And as a result, the nobles instinctively knew better than to cross the line. As far as the setting went, Cretinia Sion simply did not move because she found it bothersome. Alan briefly recalled the indifferent, almost emotionless expression he had seen in her game illustration. Alan thought, at this level, I might face some political pressure, but given her personality, she might just ignore it entirely. He remembered how she acted whenever she appeared in the game. Essentially, unless one of the 5 calamities descended upon Asteria, she was a complete non-interventionist. When a calamity appeared, she would briefly join the player's party and display absurd, overwhelming martial power. Alan asked himself, in fear, is she really going to take action just because of what's happening in the underworld? But otherwise, the Queen showed no interest in the affairs of her kingdom. She was so detached that among psychedelia players, there was even a running joke that she was less a monarch and more a sleeping dragon of the kingdom. Alan allowed himself to relax and thought, maybe this isn't so bad. If I can take this opportunity to weaken Kalfa, Alan added, and create a sort of tug-of-war with the Queen so she doesn't feel attacked, it'll also give me a good excuse to take a more passive role within the faction. Alan placed a hand on his forehead and sighed inwardly. Since the Queen is a big fan of laissez-faire, it should go smoothly. It's not like I'm challenging the royal authority. On the forest road connecting the kingdom of Asteria to the desert city of Colony, a man stood alone. In front of him lay a corpse, a brutal corpse, its right hand still gripping a quill, killed before it could even comprehend what had struck it, its neck twisted twice around. And although more than a month had passed since its death, there was no sign of decay, as though preservation magic had been applied. The man stared at it for a moment. Then the proxy let out a dry laugh and crouched down, reaching out to touch the body. The proxy muttered coldly, "He's already dead." His neck was snapped twice. Then, as he stood there, the proxy's mind drifted back. He suddenly recalled what had happened when he once met the man who had issued the order to eliminate Alan. The contractor had slammed his hand on the table and shouted in rage, his voice echoing through the room. "I have absolutely zero news about my request to eliminate Palatio," he continued furiously, his face twisted in anger. Is the agency incompetent or what? Is this how you treat your clients? Go get your superior, right away!" The assassin standing before him bowed politely and replied in a calm voice, "I will look into it immediately," but inwardly he cursed the man. The assassin thought bitterly, "This is going to fall back on me." Returning to the forest road, the proxy lifted his foot and kicked the corpse lightly. At the moment of impact, residual mana scattered into the air like dust. The proxy's eyes narrowed. He immediately recognized it. Anti-decay magic. He licked his lips unconsciously. There was only one reason to preserve a corpse like this. A warning. A message that said, if you don't want to end up like this, don't come closer. The proxy thought slowly. So this is what happened when someone tried to deal with Count Palatio. He stood silent for a moment, recalling the request the dead man had taken 2 months earlier. Then his thoughts sharpened. When, how, and in what way should I take revenge? The proxies were not bound by loyalty to one another. The only thing that mattered was their reputation. Their near-perfect success rate, the core of their identity, had to remain intact. The proxy thought coldly, the boss is going to lose it if he hears our success rate is no longer 100%. However, he was not planning to act immediately. The proxy narrowed his eyes. He thought, he's definitely strong. So the rumors weren't exaggerated after all. He recalled everything he had heard about Count Palladio. At first, he had dismissed it as typical noble exaggeration, empty achievements inflated for prestige. But now, seeing one of their own die without even managing to resist, that assumption no longer held. The proxy thought carefully. Since I can't gather enough force right now, I should find someone who truly understands Count Palatio. A faint smile appeared on his face as he turned his gaze toward Caliburn Castle. Deus Macalian, one of the master knights tied to Count Palatio. Inside Caliburn Castle, Deus was walking calmly through the corridor. Then he suddenly stopped. Without turning around, he spoke in a low voice. Behind me, a man slowly revealed himself. The proxy stepped forward, holding his scythe, and smirked. I masked my presence perfectly. You're quite perceptive. He tilted his head slightly and added with a grin, our target isn't you, it's Count Palatio. He raised his hand casually. Tell me everything you know about him, and I will leave here as if nothing happened. We will not come after you again. His smile darkened. But if you refuse, he never finished. A sudden silence fell. Then he saw it. Blood. And in the next instant, the entire scene had changed. The proxy's eyes widened slightly. Violet threads, countless clear purple lines, glowing beneath the blue moonlight, filled his vision. Like a spider web, they stretched across the entire estate. No, not just the estate. His entire field of view was covered. The threads wrapped around everything. His allies, Salgui's body, Juriyong's body, even around him. Deus, and he spoke slowly, his voice tight. So, you're also part of the agency. The threads tightened. They coiled around his body and his scythe. He tried to move, but couldn't. His breath trembled. What is this? Before he could understand, his own scythe shifted. It moved on its own, and in a single motion, it cut through his neck. The last thing the man saw as his consciousness faded was the blade turning inward as he stabbed his own throat, and beyond it, a pair of chilling violet eyes watching him without emotion. A voice echoed coldly. How dare you speak like that in front of me? The scene transitioned once again. This time, the four sins were shown sitting together while communicating through a crystal ball. During the discussion, Seolrang repeatedly insisted that she would one day marry Alan. However, Yutia strongly disagreed with her claims. As usual, the two quickly fell into another argument. Listening to their constant bickering slowly began to irritate Radahn. The discussion between the four sins continued, as Yutia firmly reminded everyone that they were merely shadows serving the great moon Alan. Seolrang immediately complained to Reen about Yutia's harsh attitude. However, Rhine calmly explained that Yutia did not mean any harm and was simply being herself. Rhine then pointed out that Yutia had served the great moon far longer than the rest of them. Hearing this only made Yutia even more confident in her stance, while Seolrang looked completely unconvinced. Meanwhile, Radahn silently watched the argument unfold and became confused after noticing that even Rhine had somehow become involved in the debate. Soon afterward, Rhine revealed that she wanted to personally send her own reports. Yutia quickly reminded her that she had always handled all correspondence for the group. However, Rhine explained that she specifically wanted to report information regarding the Tracker Eye herself. Utia immediately insisted that there had never been any problems with her reports until now. However, Rhine still wanted to personally deliver the information related to the Tracker Eye. Along with that, she also wished to include some personal updates of her own. While saying this, Rhine suddenly blushed and began laughing softly to herself. The unexpected reaction instantly shocked everyone present. For a brief moment, the others misunderstood the situation and wondered whether there was some special reason behind her behavior. Realizing that everyone was staring at her strangely, Rhine quickly cleared her throat and apologized, claiming that she had simply remembered something amusing. Although she explained herself, several suspicious looks still remained. At that moment, Deus finally joined the meeting and apologized for arriving late. The others assured him that he was still on time, though they became curious about the reason behind his delayed arrival. Before the meeting could properly begin, Deus revealed that he had something important to announce first. He explained that an organization known as the Agency had begun targeting the Great Moon. The revelation instantly shocked everyone. Deus then clarified that the organization originally consisted of 15 members, although only 12 remained after he had personally eliminated 3 of them. He also mentioned that he had already located several of the remaining members. The moment Seolrong heard this, her expression darkened with murderous intent as she immediately demanded that every single one of them be killed. Reen also revealed a terrifying expression and began talking about tearing them apart completely. Unlike the others, Radahn tried to remain calm and insisted that they should first gather information. He believed they needed to share intelligence and establish a proper plan, just as they normally did during missions. However, his cautious approach immediately caused the other Sins to glare at him suspiciously. Some of them even began questioning whether he had become a traitor. They worried about what might happen if the enemies managed to harm the Great Moon. Radahn became frustrated after hearing those accusations and tried explaining that his point was simply about understanding the full situation before acting recklessly. Unfortunately, the others seemed far more interested in eliminating the threat immediately than listening to his explanation. As everyone continued staring at him in silence, Radahn eventually gave up and admitted defeat. In the end, he agreed that immediate action was necessary. The moment he did, the suspicious atmosphere instantly disappeared, leaving him feeling even more defeated than before. Finally, Utia decided that the meeting would resume only after the matter with the Agency had been settled. With that conclusion reached, the 4 Sins ended their discussion and immediately began preparing to take action. After the meeting ended, Radahn remained deep in thought. He felt frustrated after being treated like a traitor simply for suggesting caution. Even so, he reminded himself that the Great Moon had given him power and the chance to achieve revenge. Because of that, his loyalty would never waver. However, he also realized that the devotion shown by the other Sins had already crossed the line into complete fanaticism. As the tension faded, the scene shifted to Teria, the capital of Asteria, inside the royal palace. Alan arrived at the grand banquet hall while several counts followed closely behind him, staring at him with obvious interest. Evan quietly reflected on Alan's current status. Since Alan had become the leader of Kalfa and gained immense popularity, the peaceful days of quietly spending evenings alone had completely disappeared. Even so, Evan was still uncertain whether this new situation was truly better. Meanwhile, Alan himself was becoming increasingly nervous. As people continued watching him, he suddenly panicked and felt as though everyone believed he had come to challenge the Queen directly. In reality, most of the nobles were simply curious about him, but Alan immediately misunderstood their attention and imagined the worst possible scenario. Trying to calm himself down, Alan quickly reconsidered his plan. He decided that showing complete submission to the Queen would likely make everything proceed more smoothly. After entering deeper into the banquet hall, Alan carefully observed the surroundings. The palace's overwhelming grandeur immediately impressed him. At the same time, he noticed how openly the royalist and aristocrat factions were carrying out their political schemes. He soon realized that most of them were ignoring Kalfa because they believed the Queen was about to completely crush the faction. Even with that pressure, Alan desperately tried to compose himself. He convinced himself that after being scolded by by the queen, he would simply pretend to give in and peacefully accept everything. Eventually, Alan and the other counts approached the queen together and bowed respectfully before her. Standing before them was Sancretania, the 8th monarch of Asteria. After allowing everyone to rise, her attention shifted directly toward Alan as she confirmed whether he was the current Count Palladio. Alan acknowledged it calmly, but internally he became convinced that Calfa was finally about to be destroyed. The more serious the queen appeared, the more certain he became that punishment was coming. However, the queen's next words completely shattered his expectations. Rather than punishing him, she calmly announced that she had decided to promote Count Palladio to the rank of Marquis.